In market economies, the main rules of intellectual property protection are simple. Patent, copyright, and trade secrecy encourage innovation. Trademarks encourage the production of goods and services of consistently high quality. In the case of patents and copyright, this encouragement comes from a government guarantee of a monopoly for a limited time, allowing right holders to charge more for their products. However, economic theory teaches that every monopoly comes at a cost. Those that cannot afford to pay the monopolistic price cannot enjoy the goods or services. Medical intellectual property encourages the development and production of drugs and devices that save and prolong lives. Such intellectual property raises two questions of life or death. Without adequate incentive, businesses will not invest the huge sums needed to discover new drugs or new software-based medical devices, and to meet legal requirements of proof of safety and effectiveness. And two, to the extent that the incentives are provided by allowing monopoly pricing, some people may be excluded from the benefits of innovation or be impoverished by its cost. In economically advanced countries, government-subsidized insurance programs generally pay most of the cost of newly developed drugs and medical devices. Such programs are highly popular among the beneficiaries. The programs have considerable bargaining power because of the large scale of their purchases. If two or more pharmaceutical companies have patented new drugs with some similar health effects, as in the case of recent medicines for diabetes and obesity, an insurance program may bargain a low price with a company willing to supply the drug for all the beneficiaries of the program. However, where there is one new drug that is better than others, government insurance programs are faced with a difficult financial and political choice. Paying the price demanded by the intellectual property holder will have serious budgetary consequences. Not paying the price may have serious political repercussions among disappointed government insurance beneficiaries. The pharmaceutical companies maximize their returns from their worldwide patent portfolios by engaging in price discrimination. In bargaining with government insurance programs, they settle for lower prices with the national insurance systems of poorer countries, but demand higher prices from the insurance systems of richer companies. The United States has been an exception to this policy. A high percentage of United States government payments for expensive drugs are made by the Medicare program, which provides comprehensive protection to Americans 65 years old and older. Because of their advanced age, the program recipients have much more need for expensive patented drugs than younger citizens. Pharmaceutical companies years ago successfully lobbied for a prohibition banning the Medicare system for bargaining on the price with makers of patented drugs. As a result, the United States has long paid much more for patented drugs than other economically advanced countries, such as the United Kingdom and Germany. Legislation adopted in the United States in 2023, entitled the Inflation Reduction Act, will radically change this situation. This legislation provides for gradual elimination of the restriction on bargaining and its replacement with prices that are purportedly negotiated but are in fact imposed. As is well known, the United States, as a leading exporter of intellectual property protected goods, is an international leader in pressing for ever higher international legal protection for intellectual property. However, the new law moves away from the centuries-old traditions of equal terms of patent protection for inventions in different areas. Earlier United States legislation had allowed patent term adjustment for unusually long administrative delays in the patent office and for the delays necessary to meet the stringent regulatory standards for proving safety and effectiveness before a drug could be marketed. However, these extensions were designed to equate the effective term of protection of pharmaceutical products with the effective term of ordinary mechanical patents, for which patent office delays were shorter and approval by the health authorities was not required. These exceptions really continued the tradition of a uniform term during which the patentee could recoup its investment. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2023, on the contrary, has the effect of reducing the term of effective patent exploitation for many pharmaceuticals. Thus, the Act challenges the longstanding principle of equal term of protection for all inventions. Certainly, in view of the life and death and high cost characteristics of pharmaceutical patents, it can be argued that one size fits all protection is inappropriate. But the long tradition of equal term protection has prevented the accumulation of economic data on the effect of the length of protection on incentives for development of new drugs. There's an immense amount of public information, for instance, on the optimum period of taking particular antibiotics for particular illnesses. But in contrast, there's no data on the optimum period of patent protection for incentivizing the direct development of new antibiotics. Thus, the new law moves the United States into uncharted territory in that it effectively shortens the effective term of patent protection of the drugs for which publicly financed insurance programs pay the most money. The new law provides for a gradual transition, starting with a few drugs in 2025 to a maximum of 100 drugs subject to the law's price provisions. The drugs will be selected from those that have the highest total cost to the Medicare program. Obviously, Medicare has exact accounting figures, so identifying the most costly drugs will be extremely simple. There are a number of drugs exempted by the law, even if they fall into the most costly category. There is an exemption for small molecule drugs that are less than 9 years into their patent term, and for biological drugs that are less than 13 years from their approval for marketing. Put in plainer language, this means that the pharmaceutical companies lose much of the benefit of patent protection between the 9 and 13-year cutoffs and the expiration of their patents. There's an exemption for drugs for which a biosimilar or a bona fide generic substitute is available. This exemption makes sense since if there is a competitive market, there may be no need for government price setting. There are a number of other reasonable exceptions, such as one for orphan drugs, drugs approved only for rare illnesses. The law establishes what it calls a maximum fair price. While the law presents this as an upper limit for negotiation, it is in fact a government-imposed price. The maximum fair price varies with the number of years beyond approval, reaching a low of 40% of the prior average sale price for drugs that are more than 16 years beyond approval. This, in essence, is another way of shortening the effective term of patent protection. While negotiating the maximum fair price for a drug, the United States Department of Health and Human Services is required to consider the following factors: research and development costs of the manufacturer for the drug and to the extent to which the manufacturer has recouped research and development costs, current unit costs of production and distribution of the drug, prior federal support for novel therapeutic discovery and development with respect to the drug, data on pending and approved patent applications. Government is also required to consider the following types of evidence about alternative treatments: the extent to which such a drug represents a therapeutic advance as compared to existing therapeutic alternatives and the cost of such existing therapeutic alternatives, prescribing information approved by the Food and Drug Administration for such drug and therapeutic alternatives to such drugs, comparative effectiveness of such drug and therapeutic alternatives to such drug, taking the effects of such drug and therapeutic alternatives to the drug on specific populations, such as individuals with disabilities, the elderly, the terminally ill, children, and other patient populations. The extent to which such drug and therapeutic alternatives to such drug address unmet medical needs for a condition for which the treatment or diagnosis is not addressed adequately by available therapy. Because prior draft legislation had been wrongly attacked as creating death panels to deny health benefits to elderly patients, laws also provided, quote, in using evidence described in subparagraph C, the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall not use evidence from comparative clinical effectiveness research in a manner that treats extending the life of an elderly, disabled, or terminally ill individual as lower value than extending the life of an individual who is younger, non-disabled, or not terminally ill. Not surprisingly, leading pharmaceutical companies have filed lawsuits alleging that the new legislation is unconstitutional. To date, they presented two main arguments. One, that the effective shortening of the period of patent protection amounts to the taking of private property without adequate compensation. And two, that the requirement that patent holders sign a document designating a negotiated fair price violates constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech, since it requires the companies to sign a false statement of fact to which they do not agree. Since in the company's opinion, the price is not negotiated, but is imposed and is not fair but unfair. Assuming the law is held to be constitutional, further litigation is inevitable over whether or not the government has properly interpreted and properly considered the factors listed in the law. The listed factors all incorporate very difficult issues of human judgment. There are important unanswered international questions. First, does the new law violate the international intellectual property and investment protection treaty obligation of the United States? Second, if there are no treaty violations, are other countries likely to respond with similar legislation? And there are even more important unanswered economic and political and moral issues. First, what is the effect of shortening the patent term on research on pharmaceuticals? Second, what reduction of research efforts due to lessen intellectual property incentives would be an acceptable trade-off for lower pharmaceutical prices? Thank you.